Hey, what's happening? It's Nick from the NixMyth Podcast. Tune in to this week's episode. We are talking about doing hard things. If there's something difficult in your life, you need encouragement, this one's for you. If you've been running from that difficult thing and you need someone to go ahead and spur you on, this one's for you too. So let's get into it. Hey, we are your hosts, Nick Smith.
And Kylie Jo Smith, and we are back.
We're back like the first time, babies. Here we are.
Only
Check
different.
us out.
Only a little bit different.
Just, doing the thing that we've done before that you already know about. So it's not like this first time because you're always like, you're already like prepared. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in today. We're going to talk about some good stuff.
Yes.
But first, before we get to our topic, we got to share about some cool stuff that the Inner Circle already knows about. So first, what's up, Inner Circle? How y'all doing? I hope you're enjoying that coloring book. You already know what it is.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, that's what we're announcing. So we have taken some time over the past couple of months to finish some projects that we were like sitting on, like, do we want to do this? And why aren't we doing it? And really evaluating like what was important to us. It was really like, okay, if you say you're about this, then why not do it? Why not? I mean, might as well.
Yeah.
And so I say we, it's mostly Nick's designs.
No,
like,
it's not.
She's
the
there's things that I like thought were like, oh, you
stuff.
should put that in there, maybe. And then there's other things I was like, maybe you should take that out. I don't think people will laugh at that.
That's how we work as a
that's
team.
just,
That's how it works.
But we have our real life thoughts coloring book. It is things you should think.
No, things to color and not say. So
Man,
these are thoughts.
I was so like,
you were close.
I was ready.
You were close.
Things you think you should think.
So yes, real life thoughts, things to color and not say.
Yes.
Is going to be available on Amazon this Friday. So I know it's Black Friday. There's no sale or anything on it because it's worth every penny.
Yes.
So go to Amazon and you can order that. Or you could do this. We're doing a giveaway. So if you are like one of the millions of people like free stuff, then here's what you're going to do. You're going to tag us in an episode of ours that you share.
Right. So first you got to watch it.
Yeah,
let's just say you should watch.
You should watch it. Let's put it that way. I know somebody going to cheat, but you should
watch the whole
it.
episode. Honestly, this is like one of the easiest ways to get stuff. Like it doesn't cost you anything but your interest, I guess.
That's right.
And so if you watch the episode, go ahead and like it on YouTube, comment, it's not part of the contest, but to go ahead and do that.
Just do it. It's necessary.
But then in order to enter, you are going to share that episode on Facebook
or any social media.
Or
just
Instagram,
tag us in it.
Whatever. And then tag us in it. And that's your entry.
There you go. And we're going to draw one grand prize winner who will win, who's going to win a hard copy of the real life coloring book. And then we're going to have 5 runners up. 5 second places, and they're going to get a digital download. So that way you can print it off yourself, print the PDF, print it out, color it. Same thing.
Give it away to somebody.
Your paper, not
Hang
mine.
it in your office.
Mail it to somebody.
Frame
anyway, so that's happening. So be on the lookout, share that, and enter the competition.
Yes. So let's get into this conversation because
it's time.
It's a hard one.
It's tough. So one of the things we say as the Smith family, we teach our children this, is we do hard things. And I know that sounds kind of like generic, like we do the hard, like caveman-esque. We do hard things. But it really does come up a lot because when you're raising children or when you're parenting or when you're working, whatever, you're going to come up against opposition. You're going to come up against a difficult situation. And the easiest thing to do is to find a way out of it. Like that seems to be the easiest thing because change is hard. And a lot of times when you come in contact with difficult situations, it forces you to change or it forces other people to change around you. Or it forces you to define boundaries. It forces you to implement new practices. Like things become difficult. And it's easy and even natural to run away from that because we crave easy.
Yeah.
We crave what is not difficult. And especially in the culture that we live in the U.S. is feeding that laziness, feeding that easy life, easy living, summertime, and the living is easy.
Well, and I think it comes from this like instant gratification thing that we have where we're like, I need it now. I don't want to wait because waiting is hard. Waiting involves trusting that it's going to come. And we feed into that with this like, oh, that's hard. Well, that means it's going to take too long, or that means it's going to require too much of me.
Yeah.
Or you know what? It's going to involve me sacrificing something. Like one of those things is going to happen. Maybe all of them. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And we have this like obsession with easy. Like think about the advertisements that you see.
5 easy payments.
Yeah. Oh, just in like 3 easy steps, you can get this.
Quick and
it's
easy.
These unrealistic promises that like, yeah, you could get that thing, but it's definitely not going to be easy. And anything selling you the easy mantra is still going to require more of you in the long run.
Yeah.
I think back to like even Eve, like it's easy, just take a bite. Like it's real easy. In the long run, it costs a lot more than the difficult thing of trusting what God had already said. And so in our family, this comes up naturally when our children say, oh, it's too hard, or I don't want to pick up my toys. It's hard. Yeah, we do hard things. And we point to like, we've moved cross country. Us, like in our marriage, we've done it twice. Well,
yes.
Have we done it twice? 3 times. In our family, we've moved like multiple times for ministry.
Yeah. Every
single time it's been hard because almost every single time it's involved a new baby. And so, or a small child. And so we've had a lot of hard things we've dealt with. Death, being far away from family. That's hard. Like it's not just an occurrence that's hard or an instance of hardness. It's like a season of hardship that we could have easily run from. There were many opportunities we had to say, you know what, this sounds way easier than that. But in being obedient and in seeking to do what was best for our family in the long run, we had to enter into those hard seasons, trusting that the outcome was going to be good.
Well, I think that was a key point for us in our relationship when we first started getting serious, like engaged and on the road to marriage, is understanding that difficulty does not equal bad. Because I think that's something that we equate a lot in just in our minds. If something's hard to do, then that's bad. Think about like if you had a difficult day at school, like you had a tests and all this stuff. How was your day? It was a bad day. I had tests. But it doesn't necessarily mean it was a bad day. It means you had difficult moments or there were challenging experiences. And I think we have to get away from that mindset that challenge, that hard things are bad. Like just because a situation is tough and it's difficult and it requires more of us, more investment, more attention, more discipline, more practice, more patience, that doesn't mean that the situation itself is bad for us.
Right.
Actually, a lot of times it means it's good for us. When we find ourselves in those situations, we have to realize that the activity that we're entering into, the level of effort we put forward, really does translate into growth.
Yeah.
And like the level of effort we put into something also shows us if we truly value it. Because if you truly value something or value the outcome, then you'll overcome the difficulty.
Yeah. I love the example. There's this like story from, I don't know how many years ago, like probably over 20 years ago, of this woman whose son was trapped underneath a vehicle. He was like working on it, like a mechanic or something. And she comes out and she sees like, oh my gosh, this vehicle has fallen on him. And she actually lifted the vehicle.
Yeah.
Like she was able to
had that super mama strength.
Had that, like, I mean, in that moment, that adrenaline and that mommy force, I don't know. But she...
It sounds like superheroes.
Mommy force. What force do you work under? Mommy force.
Mommy force. Coming
but
to a
she
theater near
overcame
you.
that. Like anyone else looking at that, like, I'm not trying that. I'm not going to try to lift that.
Yeah.
But she believed that she could. And she saw the outcome of my child's life being saved as more valuable than her momentary discomfort and like what she was going to feel while she did that. And like we do it with physical things, like fasting.
Yeah.
Self-denial is like anti-American, 100%. You need to be thrown in for treason, because self-denial in the sense of fasting or even like getting healthy. Like I know this is a big one, and in the next few months it's going to become even bigger because we go through seasonal spurts of being willing to entertain the idea of self-discipline and denial when it comes to our physical health. But it's true that like once we get down to the nitty-gritty, do I want longevity? Do I want a quality life? Do I want the health that I truly want? And if I do, am I willing to give up these things? Am I willing to give up sugar?
Yeah, come on.
Am I willing to give up the ability to just eat whatever, whenever, however much in order to have this? Because if I'm too comfortable with this, then I'm not going to try for this.
That idea of comfort, like I think that's key for me, because I had to come to the realization that comfort kills. Like I had to come to that realization that the more comfortable I am, the easier it is for me to fall into these patterns that lead me down the road of destruction. I know that sounds super like dramatic, but it's true. Like if you think about it, it's the fat turkey that's easiest to catch.
Come on.
Like it's the one that's
and eat
and the most delicious. But it's like when you are pacified and when you are suckling on comfort, it really does, it immobilizes you. And it can even immobilize you physically, it can immobilize you spiritually, because when you're seeking comfort and you're not ever challenged, then you don't grow, then you don't know what you're made of. People that do difficult things generally are more well-rounded people. And I don't mean like just because you climb Mount Everest, that means you're a better person than anyone. But what I mean is, how do you know what to rely on if you've never had to rely on anything? Like, how do you know what you're truly leaning on as your foundation if that foundation has been covered with, cupcakes?
Yeah.
Like, all you've really been leaning on is
your appetite.
Yeah, the things that you've been using to pacify or to cover up your lack of resilience. You know what I mean? Your lack of ability to trust. And I mean, those can be substances, those can be relationships, those can be anything, hobbies, distraction, social media. But not watching our podcast is not that. So make sure you're still watching and listening to the podcast.
This might be hard for you. You might need this.
You might need this in your life.
To challenge you. So keep it in your life.
But comfort, it leads us into that place where we die slowly. Like we're dying because we're not taking opportunities, because comfort tells us not to risk. Comfort tells us it's scary out there.
Yeah. Right.
The sloth says, or the sluggard says, there's a lion in the streets, right? Like Proverbs speaks of the sluggard being like, listen, I'm not going to go outside because I might die. But yeah, you're dying inside because you're not actually pursuing the calling that's been put on your life, or the things that are going to bring your standard of living up to a better place. Yeah.
And it's like all these things we're saying, I hope it's resonating with you, because these things are human experiences.
Yep.
Like
straight up.
The what if question paralyzes us, though it can be good and helpful in certain situations, because like, what if you succeed? What if everything turns out great? But being able to step outside of the what if on the negative and say, okay, I know what is. Like, I know what is right now is that I am, I'm 40 pounds overweight, or I'm not doing well with my physical therapy, or I'm not relating to my kids, or I'm shirking on my financial responsibilities. Yep. That's the what is. And then looking and allowing ourselves to become uncomfortable with that. I think when we're comfortable with how things are, we've numbed ourselves with whatever substance or thing outside of us. It's like, okay, as long as I can just keep numbing myself and not being uncomfortable with the thing that I'm allowing. And most believers would call that sin, that thing that we're allowing that is actually harmful to us.
That gets between us and God.
Like, if I can become uncomfortable with that, then I will move to make changes.
Yeah.
But as long as I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm not as bad as other people, or even I'm not as bad as I used to be, like, which can be helpful, but it can also feed that comfort of like, well, I can tolerate this much because, it's just too hard to think about letting go of what I love so much, and what feeds my self.
And there's a saying, I can't remember if I'm saying it correctly now, but it's like, whatever, you'll never change what you can tolerate. That's what it is. Yeah. And if you can tolerate something, you won't change it. Something about your life, something about your situation, you're never going to change that, because the good that you don't know, it seems a lot scarier than the bad you do know.
Yeah.
Right? Or say it the opposite. The bad you do know is safer than the good you don't. And so when you face a difficult situation, a lot of times you're like, okay, I know what happens if I don't overcome, because I've done that my whole life. So I know what happens there is, the same sense of failure, the same sense of, whatever. And I can just comfort myself with the same coping or lack of coping mechanisms, whatever they are. And I know how to do that, and I'm okay with that. But you don't know what it looks like to overcome a challenge and enter into a new level of growth, enter into a new level of spiritual growth, of emotional growth, of intellectual growth, like whatever that is. that area where you keep running up against that, well, I don't know, it's not really worth trying. You're stopping yourself from experiencing more.
Yeah.
More that God has for you, more that God has already prepared for you to experience in this world.
Yeah, I think one thing we want to touch on, talking about things being hard, and versus being easy. Something that has occurred to us, like just in the last couple of months, with our own health, and like we like committed to something really important, really valuable to us, which was hard. Like it was a challenge that we were like, look, if we don't make a change right now, then we're settling on this, and we didn't want to settle. And so I think it's important to note that something being simple is not always the same as something being easy. Like there are simple decisions we can make that end up leading us into hard seasons. But that doesn't mean that simplicity doesn't mean that it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
I think of like weightlifting. We talked about that earlier. Like lifting something is simple. Bend over, pick it up. But if the thing you're lifting is 50 pounds, that's going to take a different level of muscular strength and perseverance and endurance than just picking up a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So like someone saying to you, hey, you need to work on this area of your life. It's very simple. You need to overcome this area. Simple. Yeah, but that's attached to so many other things that are really heavy emotionally, psychologically, relationally. It's attached to other things that it's not easy for me to overcome this.
That's good.
But it's important to know the difference for yourself, because when someone says like, oh, it's going to be so easy, like, okay, look, dude, it's simple. But I don't think you realize that this is actually very hard for me. And I think when we're dealing with like in educational settings, if you have students or if you work with youth or people who have had adverse childhood experiences, it's important to know what you're asking of them may be simple. All I'm asking you to do is complete the chore, complete the assignment.
Trust me.
Trust me. Very simple. But that is a very heavy weight for them to lift up in that situation. And it may be difficult. And that's where we as coaches, teachers, ministers, whatever you are, aunties, uncles, parents, we have to step back and say, okay, how can I make this simple, but still help them through the hardness of it? Like still help them through the challenge. I'm challenging you. I'm not going to make this easy on you.
Yeah. I'm
challenging you, but I'm going to make it very simple for you to succeed.
Which that, honestly, the way you said that reminds me of like a gospel presentation that I've heard like a lot of times. I've even said it before, like following Jesus is simple. It's not simplistic.
Yeah.
And so like we equate simple with easy. And so we've been told in the kind of summer campy, make a decision to follow Jesus. Like it's simple. You just decide to follow Jesus. But that is the most difficult decision you will ever make, because the simplicity of saying yes to Christ has along with it the weight of denying yourself.
Yeah, the hardship.
Yeah, and Jesus even tells us, like, in this life, there will be difficulty, but trust me because I've overcome, like, follow me, believe in me. Like, all of these hard things that come our way, we get the sense like, well, bad things are happening, so I don't know if I made the right choice. But sometimes just because you made a simple choice and you know the simple choice is good for you, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy. But you know it is easy. Sharing this episode.
Oh,
super easy. Like
full circle. That was good.
You see, I brought that back. Stunting on them. But no, share this with somebody,
it's
please.
Simple and easy.
Simple.
Like I don't know
anyone
how we
can do it. Nah? And then you shame
but
people.
But it might be hard. If you, no, I'm just kidding. So yes, if
share
you,
this with somebody, please.
So one of the things that that I think we're gonna do. Well, not that I think we're gonna do. We're gonna share something very, very simple in our life right now that has actually been very hard. And so we're going to share that with the inner circle.
Yep.
And so y'all are going to get that. But I just wanted to throw that in there and bring it full circle to the inner circle as well.
I realized that we didn't actually tell people, if you're new to following NixMyth Podcast, welcome to our group. If you want to know more and you want to dive into deeper conversations and get all sorts of cool behind the scenes information, join the inner circle.
Yep.
www.patreon.com/NixMyth Podcast. I was like, slash something. Anyway.
So, you want to next one?
Okay.
How do we do this? This is weird. It's been so long.
We've done this before, I promise. No, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, like just because you say yes to Jesus and you experience hardship doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. This is a fault of a gospel that's been, a false gospel that's been told. And if you've been duped into this, or if anyone's ever shamed you with this, I just want to set you free from that shame and guilt right now, because it's not the gospel Jesus presented. And that is, if you experience hardship, it's because you're doing something wrong. If you experience anything financial, health-wise, relational, there's obviously a sin in your life that you haven't repented of, or you obviously don't have enough faith. This is something that is contrary to every experience we see of believers, of champions of faith in the Bible, because we see that every single person that has said yes to Christ, or has said yes to following, in the Old Testament, following Yahweh and experiencing that living relationship, experienced hardship. They experienced bad things happening to them, but we're not promised an easy life. What we are promised as followers of Christ is that he would be with us through everything. And because Christ is in us, we have the strength to overcome and make it through anything. That doesn't mean the bad times aren't going to come.
Right.
Because if bad times if only good times were promised, then why would we need perseverance?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If Jesus promised us deliverance from any financial, any health struggle, any struggle in our life, and it's just supposed to be put your feet up and enjoy ease, then why would we need the Holy Spirit?
Yeah.
Like, why would we need God with us?
Comforter, right?
Exactly. Like, you're only comforted when you're grieving, right? And so Jesus knew that we were going to go through grief and sorrow and trials and tribulations. He even promised them to us, hey, they're coming. Yeah. They killed me and you're following after me. So what do you expect them to do to you? But I just want to free you from that, because hard times don't equate to a lack of favor with God. And sometimes it's in those hard times where we experience the most favor with God. We draw nearest. You can ask anybody that found Jesus through hard times, through a prison sentence, right? Yeah, they may have messed up and they're experiencing the consequences of their actions, but that doesn't mean God left them. And it doesn't mean that they're not exactly where God needed them to be in order to reach them the way he needed to.
Yeah.
Right?
That's good. That's right.
All right.
Right.
Just make sure I said that right.
Yes. Well, and a lot of times we equate wealth and possessions as an indication of blessedness.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow, they have lots of money and they didn't used to. So that must mean, and all we see on the outside is what they tell us or what we perceive about their situation.
Yeah. And
we don't know the hardship that had to happen for people to be able to experience wealth or financial freedom. We don't know the things that were, under the surface or behind the scenes. But we oftentimes think, oh, it looks so easy. It just looks, and I've heard, there's a few different times like in performing that I've heard people say, oh, wow, you make it look so easy. And I'm like, I don't know if that's not what I was going for. Cause it's definitely not like, It's not easy. There's so many things going through someone's mind when they're trying to present a story or a character. And while it is a compliment, it's like, oh, wow, like that's awesome. Like I wasn't straining. I wasn't like striving for something or trying to milk any moment. But at the same time, there are so many things where it's like, oh, wow, they make it look so easy. Like you make following Jesus look so easy. It's like, whoa, pump the brakes, because you just don't know. Like, I'm sorry that's been presented to you that following Jesus is this like picturesque, everything is just easy and nothing's going wrong. Everything's
kids
just
always do what they're supposed to. House is always clean.
That may happen for a time, for a season. That may happen. Yeah. But even like the great kings and ministers that we read of in the scriptures, it wasn't always like that. And I love what Solomon said when he talked about like, yeah, you may be able to build wealth and you may be able to do this and this is great, but just know eventually it's going to fall away because everything is hevel. And so like, not to go all crazy with that, but I think it's important to know also like how we grow in hardship. You talked about that. Like there's things that we might need to go through hard things in order to learn. And I know that is how God has worked in me.
Yeah. Like I don't know anyone that's grown that hasn't dealt with hardship.
Right? Like, oh, you think you've got this? You think, okay, let's see. Let me sprinkle. Let's try a little bit. Go this way. No, get back over here. And instantly experiencing like the brokenness and realizing my brokenness. Not necessarily in a way to fix anything. Like, oh, this was hard and then it fixed this problem in me. No, this was hard and it forced me to confront my hardness of heart. It forced me to confront where I was relying on an idol rather than the creator, my God. And so that hardship is not just for naught. It's not because, again, like God is saying, uh-oh, you didn't pray enough. Hard times for you.
Like it's punishment.
Like it's punishment, because that's not how our God works. And so recognizing that, okay, what is this hardship doing in me? What am I allowing this hard season or this hard conversation.
Come on.
Sometimes that's all it is. It's just a hard conversation with somebody, but we build it up to this, like, my life is so hard now because I have to have this conversation with someone.
I got to see this person at work every day.
Because I have to walk by them every day at the office. But what is that doing in you? Is it teaching you something? Are you humbling yourself? Because that stuff's actually harder than the situation itself.
It is. And your growth is directly connected. Like, it's not like hardship, and you may have to go through some hardship to grow. No, like the amount that you grow is directly connected to hardship. So when you deal with astronauts, I don't know if you ever deal with astronauts.
I don't deal often.
Like, I've never sold them anything. I've never engaged in
I don't really find a lot of astronauts like congregating together that I'm going to be dealing with them.
It's a small group we meet on Sundays.
Astronauts, what are you guys doing over here? I wasn't expecting to see you.
Now I got to deal with these jokers over here, a bunch of astronauts hanging out. Sounds like an insult. That's not what I mean. Go back to the analogy.
Don't be such an astronaut.
Okay? Listen, here's the analogy. In space, astronauts grow. I think it's like 2 inches up to 2 or 3 inches in like height.
Pretty cool,
right? However, the reason that they grow is because there's no gravity pulling on them. There's no nothing compressing their discs and like the meniscus and all that stuff in your joints that's causing you to maintain your height. And so those things expand. However, the lack of gravity, the lack of feeling a weight on you, the lack of hardship actually causes their muscles to deteriorate. It actually causes them to have issues with sleeping. It causes all sorts of problems because actually I had the opportunity to be in a presentation where someone who was working on the International Space Station called in, did like this panel discussion. I was listening to the conversation.
That's how you deal with astronauts.
That's one time I've dealt with an astronaut. But he said that it was such a cool gospel analogy. He said after being in space or a little while or in low Earth orbit, whatever, however you want to call it, his body craved gravity. Like, it craved something bearing down on it because your body was built to carry burden. Your body was built to work. And when you're floating around and there's no work being done by your muscles and your joints and your spine, there's something biologically where your body's like, this isn't right. Like, I need that weight. I need something to overcome. And I think spiritually and emotionally and mentally, God has built that into us, just like he has physically. And a lot of our physical growth parallels our emotional and spiritual growth.
Yeah.
And I think that image of a carefree life, a life with no strain, with no burden, with no nothing to overcome, gets you to a place where you start to atrophy, you start to deteriorate. And emotionally, if you're running from growth, if you're running from hard conversations, then you're going to revert into a deteriorated state, like a state of emotional maturity that is not functionable for your age. Wow. The same with your spiritual growth. If you're running from accountability, if you're running from what God has called you to, and then you're looking at people who are living out these just marvelous faith-filled life, right? Marvelous from the outside. And you're like, oh, I want that. Why doesn't God ever bless me like that? Why don't I ever experience? You're not willing to go through the hardship of growing. Yeah. Hardship. Just so you know, there was a P in there. You don't want to go through the hardship of growth. Yeah. Because it's a direct connection. Yeah. And so you have to be willing to go through hard things if you want to become the person in your mind that you're telling yourself you are.
Yeah, that's good. And I think that acceptance of healthy challenges, because challenges come like every single day. We're met with those. You're faced with them, but you have to choose to accept it.
Come on.
You don't have to, like, not every fight that you're invited to, you have to participate in.
That's right.
So you can choose, like, I don't want to be challenged in that way. But if you accept it, it's an indication of trust. Yeah. Being challenged, like thinking of the disciples and how many of them, the 12, the ones that actually surrounded Jesus, he challenged them from the very moment he met them. Yeah. Like, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. That's a challenge. Like, you're fishing, cool, whatever. Come with me, I'm gonna show you, we're gonna catch something. What? Like, you're challenging their, like, everything about their livelihood to ask them to follow you. Yeah. Yet they accepted it because in that moment there was a trust. Okay, all right, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna trust that this dude is who he says he is and is doing what people say he's doing. And at the same time, fighting for control when we're met with challenges, when we're given the opportunity to be challenged, hinders our growth. Yeah. And it limits our relationship.
So good.
I can't tell you how many times with our students, with youth ministry, with adult ministry, asking people, do you trust what I'm saying to you? I can tell that by you not accepting this challenge, I can tell by you fighting for control and you coming up against this constantly, I can tell you don't trust what I'm saying to you. And ultimately, when you're not trusting me, like that's a relationship thing. That's going to hinder how far we can go in this, how deep our relationship can go, and how long it can be. But if you're not trusting what the word says, which is way over what I'm saying to you, you're not trusting what the word says, and that's going to limit you in relationship with God.
That's so
and
good.
That has way more of an effect on you than just this like horizontal thing. And so I think it's really important to accept those challenges. Like, yes, it's hard. Like we acknowledge that. I think it's a healthy thing to say, this is going to be really hard for me. We trick ourselves with this positive affirmation language as though it's not good to acknowledge the truth. But really, if you're lying to yourself, that's not positive affirmation. If you're saying this is going to be so easy and it's not going to challenge me at all and I'm going to feel great the whole time. No, listen to me. Like I just underwent surgery. I knew,
not like just now.
Not like just like yesterday, but like
several weeks back.
6 weeks ago. And going into it, I knew the outcome, like, okay, I'm going to feel great through my recovery. However, it was incredibly discomforting. Yes. No, uncomfortable when I came out of surgery because I was in for 4 hours, the longest I'd ever been. So like I accepted this, like, okay, I'm going to be in surgery for a long time and it's going to like, I'm going to have to go through 12 weeks of recovery. I accepted that difficulty, that hardship, knowing that at the end of it was going to be healing and restoration. I was going to feel better. My body would be rid of something that had been like really, really difficult for a long time. But like through that process, it was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I need to tell myself that it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Because if I would have said, oh, I'm going to feel great, it's going to be awesome, like the day after, I would have been lying to myself with positive language. Like,
and setting yourself up for failure.
Exactly. So when you experience that, when you come up against like, I'm going to have to tithe.
Come on.
Every week.
Like all
I'm
going
to have to put money aside to save.
Yeah. I've got to actually pay attention to my children.
Okay, that's going to be hard for me. And then why? And then ask the question, why is that hard for me?
Yeah.
Because I value my autonomy and I value, like, I want things to be easy. That's why this is going to be hard. Yeah. When we do that, we're being honest with ourselves and it actually like extends that trust and that acceptance and opens us up to vulnerability that will help us grow.
That's so good. Yeah, I think that's a good place to land.
Hey.
So in conclusion, don't be afraid to do hard things.
Yes,
right?
but also don't just jump into hard things and then ask God to bless it later.
That's like, you know what? That's another conversation
too. That's careless, but but don't be afraid of hard things. And if you're going through a hard thing right now, if this can speak to you and if we can show you like being on the other side of hard things in the past and also going through hard things currently, like you are not alone.
No,
you are never alone. That's from a musical.
I thought you were going to start singing. I'm not going to lie. When you hit that first.
No one is alone. Anyway.
I thought you were going to sing Michael Jackson.
Oh, I was into the woods. I was going Sondheim. You were going Michael Jackson. But both great.
That's how this marriage works.
But seriously, like hardship happens. Hardship is not bad.
Yeah.
Things being hard is not bad. You are not going to hear us coddle you through hardship. So do the hard thing. Forgive, love, speak up for others, speak up for yourself, work toward godly change. That's hard, but it brings about growth and goodness for everybody.
That's good stuff. I hope that you've been blessed by this podcast. Make sure that you comment, that you share, just let people know about us.
Yeah, this has been the NixMyth Podcast. We hope this episode has connected you
to living truth.
Be blessed.